At dawn on an Australian beach in 1948, a well-dressed man was found dead. No identification, no signs of violence, no cause of death. Every label had been carefully removed from his clothing. Police searched for years, but no one ever reported him missing. Then, hidden inside his pants, investigators found a message that would turn this death into one of the strangest mysteries in history. 2 words: Tamam Shud. At dawn on an Australian beach in 1948, a man was found lying against a seawall. He was dressed neatly in a brown suit, polished leather shoes, and a pressed shirt, clothing completely out of place for a warm summer morning by the ocean. From a distance, it looked like he was resting. His legs were crossed calmly. One arm lay relaxed at his side. His head was tilted slightly as if he had simply fallen asleep while watching the waves. But when passers-by approached, they realized something was wrong. The man was not breathing. Police were called to Somerton Beach, just outside the city of Adelaide. By the time officers arrived, the tide was low and the beach was nearly empty. There were no signs of a struggle, no footprints surrounding the body, no overturned sand, no indication that the man had collapsed suddenly or been dragged. He had not been robbed. There was no wallet, but also no evidence of theft. No pockets turned inside out. No torn fabric. It was as if he had arrived at the beach already prepared to be found exactly where he lay. When authorities searched his clothing, they found no identification of any kind, no driver's license, no passport, no letters, no personal effects, not even a scrap of paper with a name written on it. Despite his well-groomed appearance, no one at the scene recognized him. And that was only the beginning. Within hours, police began checking missing persons records across South Australia. Then across the entire country, no matches. Newspapers published his photograph. Radio stations described his clothing in detail. But day after day, no one came forward. No family, no friends, no employer. It was as if this man had never existed. And the more investigators examined the body, the more unsettling the scene became. There were no obvious injuries, no broken bones, no bruises, no wounds. Yet the man was undeniably dead. Doctors could not immediately determine how or why. By the end of the first day, police were faced with a disturbing possibility. This was not an accident. This was not a natural death. And whoever this man was, he did not want to be identified. The more investigators examined the scene, the stranger it became. His shoes were spotless, not a speck of sand inside. Not a single scuff marred the polished leather. His suit, neatly pressed, seemed out of place for a man found on a beach at dawn. His tie perfectly aligned, the shirt crisp and unwrinkled. Even the buttons on his shirt were meticulously fastened. His watch was stopped, the hour frozen in time. What did it signify? Did it mark the moment of death, or was it simply another piece of the puzzle? Authorities scoured missing persons records across South Australia and eventually the entire country. Nothing. No one had reported him missing. No one knew this man. IT was as though he had vanished into thin air. Even the autopsy yielded nothing. No poison, no disease, oh trauma. Every organ appeared normal. His heart, lungs, and stomach offered no clues. The man had died, but how? Witnesses described the calm serenity of his face. There was no sign of panic, no expression of fear or pain. The face of a man lying dead yet peaceful only intensified the mystery. Police examined the surrounding area meticulously. No footprints approaching or leaving the body, no scuff marks in the sand, no evidence of struggle, no tire tracks, nothing. Every element defied explanation. Even the simplest detail, his attire, suggested planning. The man did not arrive at the beach by accident. He had been carefully prepared for discovery, his identity meticulously erased. By the end of the week, it became clear. This case was more than just a mysterious death. It was a puzzle engineered with precision, a story written in silence and mystery. The body itself was only the first chapter, a prelude to a deeper, more confounding story. The beach, the morning, the calm water, the spotless sand, all were part of the stage. The Somerton Man was the actor, the audience, and the message all at once. Weeks after the discovery of the Somerton Man's body, investigators made a finding that would shock them even more. Hidden inside a small, almost invisible pocket sewn into the waistband of his trousers was a rolled-up scrap of paper. It had clearly been placed there deliberately, tucked away from plain view. On this tiny piece of paper were just 2 words, written neatly and deliberately: Tamam shud. The phrase was Persian, and it translates to, "It is finished." The simplicity of the words belied their profound mystery. What was finished? Who had written it? Why was it hidden in such a secret pocket? Police quickly traced the words to a rare edition of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a collection of Persian poetry. The paper had been torn from the book's final page. The book itself, however, was nowhere to be found, vanishing entirely, as if it had never existed. For months, this missing book became a central focus of the investigation. How could someone so meticulous in erasing every trace of his identity, cutting out clothing labels, leaving no ID, also leave a cryptic, poetic message behind? Then, several months later, a local man came forward with an astonishing revelation. He had found a copy of the Rubaiyat in the back seat of his unlocked car, parked near Somerton Beach on the night of the death. The final page, the very page with Tamam shud, was missing. Inside the back of the book, investigators discovered another layer of mystery, a cipher, a series of letters, seemingly random, arranged in unbroken rows with no spaces, no punctuation, and no clear meaning. The code appeared deliberate. Some sequences suggested repetition. Others were entirely irregular. Cryptographers examined it. Intelligence agencies analyzed it. Mathematicians and amateur code breakers tried for decades. But no one could decipher it. Theories were endless. Perhaps it was a spy code used for clandestine communication during the early Cold War. Perhaps it was a personal shorthand known only to the Somerton Man. Some speculated it was a suicide note in code, a message to someone who would never find it. What made it all the more fascinating was the connection between the torn page, the hidden pocket, and the missing labels. Every element of the man's death seemed purposeful, almost artistic. It was no accident that he was discovered in a public space, yet so meticulously erased. The Tamam shud paper, small and seemingly insignificant, was a signature of a man who lived in shadows. Or perhaps of someone sending a message across time, knowing that generations later, we would still be trying to understand him. Even today, the 2 words Tamam shud remain etched in history as symbols of the unsolved. They're a puzzle a poetic mark of finality, and a haunting clue that hints at intelligence, secrecy, and intention. The Somerton Man's hidden message was no ordinary note. It was the opening of a door into a mystery that would span decades, and ultimately into questions that may never be answered. The discovery of the cipher inside the Rubaiyat elevated the Somerton Man's case from a strange death to an unsolved mystery that would puzzle experts for decades. The code consisted of rows of letters written in careful, deliberate handwriting. There were no spaces, no punctuation, and no discernible pattern. At first glance, it appeared meaningless, yet the precision suggested intelligence and purpose. Cryptographers and code breakers examined it. Mathematicians analyzed the sequences. Intelligence agencies from Australia and abroad reviewed it. Still, no one could crack it. It was a puzzle that resisted every attempt at resolution. Speculation ran rampant. Was this a spy's secret message? Perhaps a communication between intelligence operatives during the early Cold War. Some theorized the Somerton Man might have been a covert agent, his death staged to conceal his identity and work. Others suggested it could be a personal cipher, a private note that only he could understand, or intended for someone who would never find it. Even the book's torn page raised questions. Why choose the Rubaiyat? The poetry was beautiful, reflective, and full of philosophical musings on fate, life, and death. Some believed it was a deliberate literary clue, connecting the message with the man's philosophical intent. Every element of this mystery seemed interconnected. The hidden pocket, the torn page, the erased labels, and the impenetrable cipher all pointed to a life lived with secrecy, possibly under a shadowy agenda. Authorities tried to trace the book, to locate other editions with missing pages, to find anyone who could shed light. The more they investigated, the more elusive the answers became. The Somerton Man had vanished from history, but the code ensured he left a challenge for those who followed. The combination of poetry, cryptography, and disappearance suggested a calculated orchestration of mystery. Some theorists even suggested espionage. After all, in 1948, the Cold War was escalating. Australia, as a strategic location, could have been a hub for secret operations. Could the Somerton Man have been a foreign agent, carrying a code in a book meant for a handler? Or was it a domestic intelligence operation gone wrong? Whatever the truth, the cipher ensured that curiosity would endure. The code, now known around the world, became a symbol of mystery, a challenge that continues to captivate cryptographers, historians, and enthusiasts alike. Even today, no one knows what the code means, who wrote it, or what its intended purpose was. It remains one of the most tantalizing, unsolved puzzles in history. Among the more mysterious elements of the Somerton Man case was a phone number found in the back of the Rubaiyat. Following the trail, police were led to a nurse who lived a few hundred meters from the beach. She was described as calm, orderly, and meticulous. A figure that seemed almost ordinary, yet somehow at the heart of an extraordinary mystery. When officers showed her a plaster bust of the Somerton Man, her reaction was sudden and extreme. She nearly fainted. Yet she insisted she had never seen the man before. Witnesses, however, noted that her reaction seemed too intense to be genuine. She admitted to having given a copy of the Rubaiyat to a man years earlier, but refused to say who. She eventually married, had a child, and never spoke publicly about the case again. Yet decades later, researchers observed a chilling coincidence. Her son shared rare physical traits with the Somerton Man, genetic markers so unusual that the odds of coincidence were extraordinarily low. This human element added layers of intrigue. Perhaps the man had been known to her after all. Perhaps there was a personal connection. Or perhaps fate had intertwined lives in ways that remain unknowable. Every step in this investigation added tension. The hidden message, the missing book, the secret pocket, the cipher, and now a woman who seemed to remember more than she admitted. The Somerton Man's life, or death, was a web of deliberate mystery. The human element transformed the story from a cryptographic puzzle into a narrative with emotional weight. It became clear that someone had orchestrated the discovery of the body to conceal as much as to reveal. Even decades later, scholars and enthusiasts debate. Did she know him personally? Was she involved in espionage? Or was this an innocent yet unnerving connection, forever lost in time? The Somerton Man's death was no ordinary mystery. It combined secrecy, intelligence, and deeply human emotion into a single, unsolved enigma. More than 7 decades after the Somerton Man's mysterious death, modern science offered a new opportunity to uncover the truth. In 2022, forensic experts exhumed the remains from their resting place. The soil was carefully removed, and the body was transported under strict chain of custody protocols. Every step had to preserve the delicate DNA that might finally answer questions that had remained unsolved for over 70 years. Using advanced genetic genealogy, researchers extracted DNA from the remains and compared it to international databases. The results suggested a likely identity: a man born in Europe, potentially with connections to intelligence networks that were active during the post-war era. This revelation provided tantalizing clues, but did not solve the deeper mysteries. How did he arrive in Australia, and what compelled him to travel so far from home? Why was he found on Somerton Beach, meticulously dressed and carefully staged, yet with no traceable history in the public record? Even with a probable identity, investigators could not answer the most pressing question: the cause of death. Modern forensic pathology offered no definitive explanation. Toxicology tests were inconclusive. Heart, lungs, and organs showed no visible signs of trauma. It was as if the man had died without leaving a trace, yet the body had been prepared for discovery. The hidden message in the rubaiyat, the cipher written in the back of the book, and the missing clothing labels suggested intentional secrecy. Every detail hinted at intelligence or espionage, yet nothing could be confirmed. Speculation runs deep. Some experts believe the Somerton Man may have been involved in a covert operation, possibly connected to Cold War intelligence. Others suggest a personal tragedy, a hidden romance, or a betrayal that required careful orchestration. Yet even with DNA, the puzzle remains unsolved. The modern investigation revealed one truth: the Somerton Man's death was far from ordinary. Every detail, from his hidden pocket to the torn book and the coded message, was part of a carefully constructed narrative. Whether he was a spy, a man in hiding, or someone orchestrating his own final mystery, the story transcends the limits of forensic science. Even decades later, the questions endure. Why erase every label? Why hide a cryptic message meant to be discovered? Why place the body where anyone could find it, yet leave nothing else to trace his past? In a sense, the Somerton Man's identity may never fully matter. It is the mystery itself, the combination of secrecy, intelligence, and human enigma that captures the imagination. Modern science has offered clues, but the puzzle remains unsolved, haunting scholars, investigators, and curious minds around the world. The Somerton Man remains an enigma even after decades of investigation, scientific analysis, and historical scrutiny. He arrived on a beach with no past, no traceable identity, and no explanation. Two words, tamam shud, torn from the pages of a rare book. A code, impossible to decipher. A body meticulously dressed and staged for discovery. A woman who may have known more than she ever revealed. Who was he? Was he a spy operating in the shadows of the early Cold War? Or was he an ordinary man with extraordinary secrets? Perhaps he carried a personal message meant for someone who would never see it. Every clue raises more questions than answers. Why remove every label from his clothing? Why hide a cryptic message in a secret pocket? Why stage the body so carefully in plain sight? Theories abound. Some say espionage. Others claim a tragic romance, a life cut short and intentionally obscured. Could it have been a final act of self-expression, a puzzle left for the world to ponder? Even modern DNA analysis, which linked him to European origins and possible intelligence connections, cannot fully solve the mystery. His life, or perhaps his death, was deliberately constructed to remain elusive, and that may have been the point. The Somerton Man is not just a case study in forensic science or history. He is a narrative, a story designed to perplex, to intrigue, and to endure. He reminds us that some mysteries are beyond the reach of answers, and some puzzles are meant to inspire curiosity more than closure. What do you think happened? Was he a man of secrets, a pawn in a larger game, or simply a tragic figure whose story ended in mystery? His final message, his code, and the torn pages of a centuries-old poem continue to echo across time, a haunting invitation to anyone who dares to explore the unknown. As the waves crash on Somerton Beach and the fog rolls in with the morning tide, the Somerton Man waits silently in history, a riddle without resolution. Every generation that revisits this case finds new theories, new questions, and new fascination. The story is alive, growing, and as mysterious now as it was the day he was found. So, what do you believe? Comment below with your theory, because the Somerton Man's story is far from over. It is a puzzle that may never be solved, a haunting mystery that will endure for generations to come.